G'day guys, it's Tim Guest here. I hope everyone had a great weekend and the start of the week has really gotten off to a good one. I know obviously for all of our clients and the people following us that are in Perth, they enjoyed a long weekend. And of course for all of those in Victoria this week, not only we've got the grand final coming up, but there's a long weekend and they get an extra day off on Friday. So hope everyone's got a great week ahead. Look, today what we're talking about is the latest blog article that we put out on the website, and it really is starting to deal with the 7 questions that every property investor needs to ask themselves. Now, obviously, if you're already investing in property, this is a really good idea to get started on this now. And of course, if this is something that you're considering, you definitely want to run through these particular questions before you start investing in property. So let's really just get stuck straight into it, guys. So for me, the first thing you need to be asking yourself is, why am I investing in property? Now, one of the biggest things that I see with people, and obviously I come across and talk to a lot of people that are looking at investing, not just in property, but in all sorts of forms of investment. But one of the biggest things that I see out there in the marketplace is that very few people have ever actually sat down and spent some time looking at where they want to get to. Now, of course, we all know that very famous saying by Winston Churchill. Benjamin Franklin said something very similar, that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So you've got to have a plan if you're going to be successful in anything in life. And of course, the first thing that you've got to start off with, if you're going to have any kind of plan, is the destination. So this goal is a really critical thing to begin with, because once you start dealing with that goal and once you start dealing with where you're actually starting from, that will start to give you some information about whether property investment is actually going to be the best option for you. Now, look, there are many different options out there, and there is no one investment strategy that is better than another. So, particularly, and I know there's a lot of people out there that say that, you should be investing in property. And even if I asked a lot of people right now, which is better, property or shares, I'm sure a lot of people would have an answer about that. But let's really deal with that. There are all sorts of different kinds of strategies. They all have different pros and different cons. There is no strategy that is better than another. What there is, though, is different strategies that might be better for a particular individual. Now, of course, how this is going to apply is, of course, where you want to get to, where you're starting from, and what sort of time frame you've got to get there. Now, just to give you some brief breakdowns of what the different things that you might ask yourselves, or the different pros and cons. As an example, with property, there is the benefit to being able to leverage with property. Now, just very briefly on leveraging, if you're going to buy a house, say it's a $500,000 house, do you need $500,000? The answer is no, you only need the deposit. Okay, so one of the benefits that often when investing in property, it allows you to leverage a larger asset base. However, at the same time, while leveraging, of course, you're going to have the expense of carrying that mortgage. So you've got that cash flow that you're going to have to bear. Not only that, but if you want to get out of your investment, it's not as liquid, it's not as fluid. So you can't just turn around tomorrow and get the money back for your house. It would require you putting it on the market, it probably require dealing with an agent. It may take you anywhere from 1 to 3 months to be able to sell that property. Okay. On the flip side, when you look at something like shares, you might have 50 grand. You might invest 50 grand into shares. That shares are quite liquid. You can sell those shares relatively quickly, and of course you don't have any holding costs, right? So if you're going to be investing in property, the first question that you need to be asking yourself is, what are my goals? Where am I standing from? And where do I want to be getting to? So that's the first thing you need to deal with. Second thing, is everyone on board? Now, this is bigger than you might think. Now, of course, if you're part of a couple, obviously the kind of question around this is pretty obvious. Now, if you're looking at doing this with someone, you need to make sure that they have a full understanding of what it is that you're going to be taking on. Are they on board? Do they have an understanding of all the benefits, of all the risks, of all the costs? Are they fully supportive? Now, particularly when you're investing in property, this is normally a long-term investment strategy, and anything that's going to be done for the long term, man, it's much better to do it as a team, and a team that's all on the same page. But where this does go further, say for example, and one of the things that we're seeing more and more of is particularly younger, savvy individuals looking to invest in property from as young an age as possible, because they want to build the kind of life that they want to be able to build. Now, it does pay a lot of dividends to actually get your parents involved. Now, look, mum and dad, okay, you may be an adult, you may be an individual, and you may be able to do this all on your own, but the reality is mum and dad, they want to make sure that you're not doing anything, you're not assuming any risk that you shouldn't be. They want to make sure that it's going to work out for you, so they're probably going to be asking questions and queries. Probably one of the smartest things that I see a lot of our clients doing nowadays is actually getting mum and dad involved from a very, early stage, so that the family unit is pretty important for most people. If the people that are around you, the people that are going to be providing you with support, the people that are going to be involved with you over the long period of time, if they're on board, if they understand everything that's going to be happening, then that's going to make the journey a lot easier too. Okay. Third thing we need to start to deal with is what can you afford? Now, what I'm talking about here, firstly, is from a cash flow perspective. And normally one of the biggest questions that I ask people when people are firstly considering investing in property is how much can you afford to invest every single week? Okay, if you're going to be buying an investment property, there's going to be a certain holding cost every week. Now, of course, you buy an investment property. To be an investment property, it's got to be generating an income. It's got to have a tenant, so you're going to be getting a certain amount of rent per week. At the same time, you're also going to have the mortgage, the interest payments. You're also going to have things like your insurance, your maintenance. You're going to have things like your property management, okay? And then, of course, the other thing that you've got to consider is all the tax implications of there as well. Now, of course, there's no point buying something you can't afford. And this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when it comes to property investing, is buying something that they can't afford, hoping that the growth is what's actually going to be able to fund that investment, and you're pretty much guaranteed to fail. I can tell you that right from the get-go. I've been doing this for a very long time now. People that invest and buy something hoping that the growth is what's going to be able to fund that investment invariably fall on their face, okay? So don't do that. Now, the other thing that you might want to consider is, look, while the tax advantages are going to make up one of the cash flow perspectives, for many people, they're not going to lodge their tax until the end of the year. So you're going to have to carry a higher holding cost until you're going to be able to get that big fat tax check back from the government. Now, it doesn't have to be done that way. You can get something called a tax variation. Not a lot of people know about this, but it means where you can actually get those tax benefits every pay cycle, whether that be fortnightly, weekly, monthly, rather than having to wait until the end of the year. But regardless, you've got to know what that number is, and you've got to be certain that you're able to afford that investment. The third thing that we can then start to look at, and this will be informed by what you're able to afford every single week, because it'll then be able to determine your budget. Now, not just the budget in terms of what value of a house that you can buy, because that initial capital investment, the house is only one element of it. Not only are you going to be buying a house for, say, $450,000, $500,000, whatever it is, but then you're also going to consider all the costs involved. Now, one of the biggest ones is stamp duty, okay? Government fee comes from the state government. You're going to have to be able to pay this fee. So if you don't have the money, if you're not including that in your budget, you're going to get caught out. You're also going to think about all the settlement fees that you're going to require when buying this particular house. So there's going to be things like possibly land tax, rates, the settlement fees that you pay the particular settlement agent, those kind of things. If you're not allowing for all those expenses when you're actually going to be going for your initial capital investment, of course, you're going to get caught out. But now that you've started to take care of the financial side of things, we've talked both about the cash flow and the initial capital investment, now we can start to think about the area. Now, the area is the next thing that you want to look at. Now, once again, this is where we see a lot of people make some pretty pivotal mistakes when it comes to investing in property. And I probably should have gone through this right at the very beginning, but if we look at the stats out there, and these are stats provided by the ATO, 75% of people only ever buy one, okay? 50% of those will sell it within the first 7 years. Man, that's not some great figures when it comes to how successful people are investing in property. And one of the reasons for these figures is that typically people are buying the wrong thing in the wrong areas at the wrong times and utilising the wrong strategies. Now, here we're starting to deal with the areas, okay, that people should be looking at. Now, a lot of the time what I see is people going to publications, okay, the media, to find out where they should be buying. Now, whether this be a 3-monthly property report that comes out in a newspaper, whether this be being informed by certain magazines. And I really do not recommend that you use those kind of publications as sources for the information that you need to invest. Now, here's why. One of the things that most people very rarely piece together are these publications, okay? You are not really the customer. The primary customer and the primary way that these publications make their money is through advertisers, okay? So you really got to keep in mind these publications are primarily geared around providing the advertisers with what they want, which means particularly when it comes to things like property magazines, this information is often going to be tainted by the people that are wanting to buy advertising space in those magazines. It means that you can't really trust the information, okay? The other thing that we see a lot of people do, and where they often go wrong as well, is that they will be investing in areas based on their local knowledge. So maybe they grew up in an area, they've lived in an area for a long period of time. It makes them feel comfortable investing somewhere that they know. Once again, depending particularly on where that particular area or even that particular city or state might be in its economic cycle, can really leave people caught out. Now, personally, I think anyone who's looking at investing in property should be considering Australia-wide. Now, not only just for each individual investment, but when it comes from the risk side of things, if you're just buying in one area, if things don't go well in that area or infrastructure plans don't go ahead or things like that, then you got all your eggs in one basket. Okay, you've got to be spreading your risk. You've got to be diversifying by investing in multiple areas. Now, if we look at the statistics from the ABS, now not long ago the ABS put out the report that they're predicting that Australia will have a 40 million population in the next 40 years. We want to look at, firstly, and I want to bring your attention to the three main capital cities where this population growth is going to be had. Okay, the largest population growth we're going to see over the next 40 years is in Perth as a capital city. So that would be a great area for people to be looking at investing in. Now we've got to look at the timing as well. It just so happens that Perth is in a really great place in terms of its economic cycle at the moment as well. Brisbane is going to have the second highest population growth over the next 40 years, okay? And then Melbourne is third. So I would recommend that people probably look at those three particular cities and those three particular states if they're going to be building a property investment portfolio. However, if you want to look at not only where to be buying, but when to be buying there, then you need to really look at the actual up-to-date data. So one of the things that we provide our clients is that we buy data from 4 of the top independent research analysts in Australia. So that way we're able to collate and extrapolate this data so that we're able to then feed to our clients what the top 20 to 25 investment areas at any one time in the entire country are. Okay, that's how we do it. You know, if you're going to be investing in property, I recommend that you do something similar. You should definitely be reaching out and buying some of this data, but of course it can be a little bit expensive, okay, if you go to these independent research analysts, okay? The sixth thing is, what type of property should I be buying? Now, there are different property investment strategies, different types of houses. Once again, just like any investment strategy, they have different pros, different cons, and they're going to suit individual investors better. So to run through some of the most common forms of investment strategy, probably one of the most common forms that we see is buying an old house on a big block, and people are really thinking about the subdivision potential here. Okay, look, it can offer good capital growth prospects. However, normally the cash flow is significantly negative. And if you are thinking about developing, there is some serious risk that you need to be contemplating when it comes to developing a property. The second kind of investment strategy that we often see is by buying an old, a dilapidated house in, you know, what you might consider a blue chip suburb, and renovating for profit. Okay, so once again, you know, there's in terms of you can get decent capital growth out of this. You might even get a good cash flow once the renovation is complete. Obviously, your cash flows through the floor when you're doing the renovation because you're not generating any income. Biggest thing we see with this particular strategy is the huge amount of risk that's involved. We always see time blowouts, cost blowouts when the renovations. In a lot of cases, not everyone, it's suited. You know, there are particular individuals that do make good money out of these strategies, but we typically find the majority of people, while they make some money, it's typically not worth their time and their effort. You know, apartment strategies, that's something a lot of people are looking to take advantage of the tax advantages. Positively geared strategies by investing in regional or resource-based towns, another very common strategy, or even house and land packages is a good investment strategy as well. Okay, so you need to be considering what investment property is going to suit you as an individual and your plan and where you want to get to, particularly the pros and the cons. Okay. Now, also, what do you need to prepare for? And guys, this is, you know, in all the years that I've been doing this, this is where you really start to deal with the you know, if there is a secret or a golden key or, you know, a magic recipe or something like that that you need to focus on when it comes to being able to be successful in property investing, this is where it really starts, okay? What is it that I need to prepare for, okay? The risk is what people never really consider when it comes to property investment, and it's actually where the secret to success actually is. Okay. Now, most people focus on capital growth. They want to buy a property that is going to jump in value over a short period of time. Seems very attractive. You know, I mean, who doesn't want to invest and make a lot of money in a very short period of time? The thing that you've always got to keep in mind, though, is in any strategy where you're looking at getting a greater rate of return, it always involves assuming more risk. Okay, another thing that a lot of investors focus on, rather than maybe the capital growth, is the cash flow. So sometimes people want to buy an investment property that's going to produce them a positive cash flow, and then they can live off that positive cash flow. Okay, so they're the two factors that most people are focusing on when it comes to investing in property. But that's not where the secret is. That's not where the gold is. The gold is in the risk. So out of those three factors, cash flow, capital growth, risk. Risk is where it all happens. Now, why do I say that? Because if we look at the average growth over time, you look at long-term growth rates, pretty much everything in Australia grows at the same rate. Okay, the variation is maximum of around about 1%. And I'm talking 15-year growth rates, okay? So ultimately what's that saying is things grow the same over the long term. Property investment is a long-term investment strategy. The key to being able to hold a property that's going to make you a lot of money over the long term is being able to ride the waves of the economic cycles. Now, you guys, you don't need me to tell you this, okay? How does economic cycles work? Well, what comes after a boom? I can hear you all answering a bust. And what comes after a bust? I can hear you all answering a boom, okay? Property moves, just like every investment, moves in economic cycles, okay? You need to be able to plan to be able to hold that investment property through not only the economic cycles, but all of the eventualities that can happen when you have an investment property. So what are the things that I'm talking about? Things like sometimes rents go up, sometimes they go down. You need to plan for allowing for lower rents. You need to plan for interest rate increases, okay? Once again, we're in, the bottom of an interest rate cycle. You need to plan for the what ifs, like sometimes tenants do trash houses. Sometimes people lose their jobs. Sometimes people injure themselves and aren't able to work. Sometimes people die, okay? Now, any smart property investment strategy will allow for all of these potential eventualities to come into play. Okay, the smart property investor is one who builds a strategy allowing for all of those things to happen, and then that means that he's not walking a tightrope. Okay, he's got a lot of buffers and a lot of safety nets which allow him to hold that property over the long term. I remember that, I'm getting a bit of an old bloke now. I was born in 1977. The median house price in Perth was $14,000. So we're talking almost 40 years. Now, if I can hold a property for almost 40 years, the growth that I'm going to get out of the property is that extraordinary. And that's what's going to retire me. That is what is going to enable me to live the kind of life that I want to live. Okay, so really the key and the goal is being able to ride those cycles. Guys, that's pretty much all I've got for you tonight. Okay, I'm going to post a link in this so that you've got an access to the blog article itself, so you can go back and read through the article. Of course, we always love your feedback. We always love your questions. If there's something in particular that you want me to talk about, please post it in the comments section, or please send us a message, and I'll be more than happy to do a Facebook Live. I do plan on doing another one maybe later in the week. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for me. I hope you guys have a great week, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks a lot, guys. Good night.